Okay, so we've read in data frames, we've done some merging, we even did some diagnostic testing. I didn't think we were going to do that, but we did. I'm glad we did because I had a error in my price list. So we've got to keep moving on and let's do some other things. Now, when we saw that sales file, boy, that thing was huge. Maybe I don't need that many records. Maybe there's a way to summarize it, make it a little smaller so it's a little bit more manageable. So what we want to do in this particular area is start thinking about aggregations, trying to aggregate data to make it a little bit more user friendly. Because looking at 13.5 million records, that just becomes too much. So we want to do aggregations, but have an idea about why we're aggregating them. So what we're dealing with here is the idea of summarizing data frames. Okay, so many times we want to take 13.5 million records and make it more useful and summarize it. The previous examples gave us a summarization, right? We go back, we were able to summarize using different statistics. Right? And so it was able to give us some summarization, right? We were able to figure out what's the mean of whatever the variable is we're looking at. So instead of calling out individual functions like we did, we also use the describe function. So instead of we were using describe, right? And you can isolate the variables you wish to describe or the types of data you wish to describe. Okay, so all of that, is pretty straightforward, I think. So let's go back to and let's do this, right? Let's right, we got to import. We're going to import NumPy and pandas. We may need both. Don't know yet. Right? And we want to read in our data frame. And we're going to read in that sales data frame. So pandas read underscore CSV. And we want to read in sales final 6/30/2021 .csv. All right. And we also want to change the date from a object to a date time variable. Okay. And the more more you start using this, the more you get used to how to call certain variables, right? This, when I first started doing this, I had to be very mindful of, well, what does this mean? And now I know exactly what it means because I've done it enough. All right, so let's let's do these things here. Read in the data frames. That's going to take a second, and we'll make the change here as well to that file. All right, so now what we want to do is let's create a data frame that just does a description, does a describe of everything, okay, of everything. And then we'll do a second one, df2, where we want to describe and we want to include equals all. Right? And then we'll do df3. And with this, we want df describe. In this one, we want to include objects, just objects. So here we've got to put this in the brackets, object. And then we'll do a df4 where we'll have them describe the date time. We're doing this just to kind of show what you've got to think about when you are trying to get descriptions of these. And then the last one we'll just ask for numbers. So df5 will make that df describe, and we want to include, and here we want to put number. Okay. All right. So let's do the first one. Let's create df1. We've read in our data, so that's good. Let's do df1. And it's going through and it's going to describe a bunch of stuff. And we'll take a look at what df1 has in it. So df1 has 8 rows and 9 columns. So let's see what is in this. Okay, so this is what it tells us. I'll make this a little bigger. Here we go. So it gives us what the count is. It gives us the mean across everything. Right? But notice it's only giving us this stuff for things that are numbers. Right? It's not giving us everything. It gives me the standard deviation, the minimum, the 25th percentile, the median, 75th percentile, and the max. Right? Okay. Well, what if we wanted to include everything? So when you just have the brackets here, it's only going to go after integers and numbers. All right, so let's do 19 and get df2, and let's see what we get when we put in all. So now it's going to take a little while longer, but we should be able to see what it's going to do with these other variables. All right, so here's df2. Now we have 13 rows from 8, okay, and we have 14 columns. Well, now we have all the variables because we had 14 columns here, we have 14 columns here. So we've got all of our variables. And you'll notice a lot of this stuff becomes null. Right? It becomes null. So we've got our count, we've got unique new variable. Okay, how many unique IDs are there? Well, there's 308, 599. That might be very interesting. That might be very, very interesting. Description, there's 13,516 unique descriptions. Okay, that's interesting, right? All of a sudden now we're starting to think, okay, there's 308,000 very specific IDs. All right, so I could theoretically, if I wanted to, that might be an interesting thing to look at for maybe other further summarization. And these 308,000 IDs break down to only 13,516 descriptions. Okay, that's also very interesting. So it tells me that I've got lots of stores that are selling the same product, same description product. Sizes, there's 66 different bottle sizes. Okay, also interesting. There are 364 sales dates. Which sales date are we missing? Where's 365? That's also interesting. There are 190 different vendor names. Okay, that's fascinating. All right. Then we have top, right? So 5 the inventory ID 5-5401 appears to be the most frequent or the top item that's in here. Okay? And I think the frequency would suggest that the frequency in the top is they're likely related. So this shows up 343 times. From a description standpoint, it'd be interesting to see if this top is Tito's homemade vodka. This tells me that this shows up the most frequent. And how frequent? 95,191 times. Okay, so if you think about, I'm going to just bring up my little calculator here. If you think about put it on the screen here. So if you think about 364 days of sales, right? So, and we have, 80 stores. So 95,191 divided by 364 days, that suggests that there's 261 stores. Oh. But this is just the top description. Is it possible that the top description, I might have Tito's handmade vodka at 75 milliliters, and maybe I have it at smaller amounts as well? So while this is the frequency of this, it's quite possible that I've got this same description across a variety of different bottles. Again, I'm just analyzing, right? Which is all we're doing is we're analyzing here. 750 milliliter size, so it's 66 different sizes. This is the most frequent size we see, 750 milliliters. Again, all of this is interesting information. And it shows up 7,846,000 times. So this, we're selling fifths, right? I guess that's the way you look at it. That's a fifth of whatever. All right, then we can go over to sales date, right? So we've got 364 sales dates. That's great. The most frequent sales date we have is December 23rd. Okay, that's very interesting. I think that's very, very interesting. And that shows up 77,000 times. Very interesting. A lot of different types of product being sold 2 days before Christmas. Right? I guess it doesn't surprise anyone. Our most frequent vendor is Diageo North America. So we do a lot of sales of their products. Right? So just by including all of these things, in addition to just the numbers are good, but this describe also helps us get some other ideas. And you can go through, if you didn't want to do all of them, maybe you just want to do the objects. You can just do the objects, and that's going to give you only those items that are not numbers, right? We'll wait for DF3 to come up. I'm also going to run DF4 and DF5, just so I can keep those separate. And it looks like I have data time, not date time. Let's change that. Little typos here. Let's try that again. And we'll get DF4 in here. Beautiful. So now I can look at DF3, and that's just the objects. So that's giving me inventory ID, description, size, vendor name, right? Okay, that might be great, right? Versus when I used all, I had inventory ID, description. I didn't see size, right? I didn't see size in DF3. Oh, I did see size. I apologize. I did see size in DF3. But I didn't, didn't see sales date, right? Sales date's not an object. So we saw inventory ID, description, size, vendor name, right? And that's what we saw in DF3. Inventory ID, description, size, and vendor name. So we can just look at this and get a feel for that. If I wanted to see just the time variable, here's my time data. The first sale was July 1st. The last one was June 30th. That makes sense because this is a June 30 year end. Okay, and then I can just look at DF5, which is just the numbers, just to isolate just the numbers. which is identical to what you saw in DF1, right? It's the same 8 by 9, but I've just defined it by looking at just the numbers. So if you only want to focus on certain functions, you can use an aggregation function, right? So maybe, the first two examples, we are just aggregating based or describing data based on different methodologies. Okay? All right.